Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
G'day, how you going? Phil Tarrant. I'm the host of the Smart Property Investment Show. They can't get rid of me yet. I've been doing this for way too many years, which isn't a bad thing, really. I do enjoy having a chat with everyone in and around property, talking property investment. It seems to dominate a lot of my life these days, and it's funny when most people go to a dinner party and or a barbecue, and it's the great Australian tradition to talk about property. I typically try and avoid trying to get in those conversations because I get sick of talking about property sometimes. And for some reason, people think because I host this podcast and it gets, 250,000 sort of downloads every single month, that actually know what I'm talking about. And I'm always quick to say, look, I don't really know that much about property, but what I do know a bit about is how to talk to people and interrogate, quiz them, try and uncover their thoughts and views and attitudes and experience and journey through property investing. And they seem to be the stories that people like. So just a caveat, if you see me at a dinner party or at a function and tell me where you should buy, the answer you're probably going to get is go, I don't know. I use people. I use people that I know who know where to buy to make the buying decisions for me and help me manage my portfolio. So that's going to be my advice to you. Surround yourself with the right people. If you ask me whether or not X suburb is a good place to buy, I'm going to go and look at the Fast 50 report that we did a little bit earlier this year because that's where the experts say you should be buying today for the best capital growth into the future. So a bit of a cop-out, but make sure you come and say good day if you see me. Keen to hear about it, your experiences investing in property. Keen to work out how we can get you onto the show to come and have a yarn and share your journey and experience through property. And there's a lot of this on YouTube now as well, so welcome. You can come on and not only on the audio but on the broadcast as well, and we can have a chat running up to the Christmas period, which is cool. Which means it gets super busy. And I was just in the lift then having a chat with one of my colleagues here, and I was just saying, I'm just trying to bat off social invitations at the moment. Everyone wants to pin you down for doing something, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing yet. So that's a real first world problem. But I have been out and about a bit. I've been travelling a lot lately. Only last week I was in Melbourne for a big roundtable with all the non-major banks who were super well represented. It was part of the Advisor, which is the media platform for the mortgage industry, and pretty much every non-major bank was there, from AMP to Suncorp to Bendigo and Adelaide Bank to St George Bank to MyState. Pretty much every single head of those non-banks were there, and we had a really good discussion around the non-major sector. So this is the banks, ADI, deposit-taking institutions that aren't NAB, CBA, Westpac, and a Commonwealth Bank, and it just reminded me the competitiveness of those non-major banks and how they can be a great enabling utility for property investors. So I'm going to do a little bit more on that, so watch this space. But I'd like to keep dialed in with what's happening, not only in lending land, but also within the markets themselves. And that's, as I was saying, when I do catch up with people, they normally ask me what's going on where, and I normally, as I mentioned, sort of pass it off and say, oh, well, you should chat to X, Y, Z. One of the people I chat to when I want to know what's going on is Arjun Paliwal from Investor Kit. He's a good friend of the Smart Property Investment Show. We bring him on every now and then to get his sense of things. He's happy to put his name to predictions. He's quite bullish sometimes, and he's not scared to say it as it is and defend his position. And he gets it right most of the time. So he must be doing something right. It's because probably, and this is a term of endearment, he's a massive nerd. He loves numbers, loves spreadsheets, loves data. His idea of a good fund is doing macros on an Excel spreadsheet. Good luck to him. But anyway, he's one of the friends that I phone to work out what's going on. So I've brought him in so we can have a chat, see what's going on. Arjun.
Hey, mate.
How's it going?
Mate, very, very good. And I envisioned Phil Tarrant at one of those barbecues and someone asked him a question and Phil goes, mate, supply demand. the infamous cop-out of supply demand.
It's really funny because I go to a lot of stuff, whether like if it's not work stuff, if it's non-work stuff, and you always have that awkward, whether it's school stuff and meeting parents and all that sort of thing. You have that awkward conversation around, what do you do? And I try and avoid it. I hate talking about what I do, largely because I don't know what I do. But and I normally give a really sort of glib answer. I just sort of, company director and do all that sort of boring stuff. And then someone will go, oh, but he hosts this property podcast. And everyone goes, we should have been investing in property. And I go, speak to Arjun Paliwal. It's funny, though. What do you say you do it when you're at a barbecue? You're always looking for business, so go, I'm a buyer's agent.
Oh, look, I think over the last few years it's evolved, right? Because earlier years it was the case, 2018, 19. Every time your hand stuck out for a handshake, my business card was in it.
Yeah.
So that was me. But over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, I've been just fiddling around with saying stuff like, oh, I'm into my research of properties, do a bit of data stuff, do a bit of this. And I think as the years have gone on, it's not about all the what you do. It's about being able to sit down and I can talk about so many cool stories and just where clients are going to, where they're heading, where they've achieved. And that's probably not the fun part now. It's just talking about actual client results and myth busting and talking about what you can and can't do. That's the cool stuff these days.
That's cool stuff, and it's very visceral, the stories, right? You can talk about data and performance and stuff, but it's when you actually talk about outcomes for people where they go, oh, that could actually be me. But I hear you've just got the most important job that you're ever going to have, mate, a father.
Absolutely. Mate, I'm loving every single bit of it, and I don't mean to, be one of those dads that tries to make things overly positive and things at home are running like chaos. They're actually going really good.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I'm trying to bring the world of data over to the baby side.
Yeah, it's not going to work, man.
It's not working. Here's me grabbing those black and white cards, thinking I'm intellectually improving everything here and chucking them in. And like some days she's up for it. Some days she's like, just get this out of my face. Come on, like just pick me up, take me for a walk and I'm good. So I'm trying to find the sweet balance of data with baby and no data.
Yeah, but babies aren't data driven. Yeah. They'll do what they want when they want.
That's
and, if you try and control that, mate, good luck to you, mate. People for thousands of years have tried it. But congratulations to you. And
Thank
I'm
you.
really happy for you guys.
Thank you.
That's great news, and might give you a new perspective on how you go about sort of building your business moving forward. But you're not slowing down by any means.
No, I mean, hot off the winning buyers agency of the year this year, that I think not so much what it did for the business, probably what it did for my mindset. It gave me a sense of confidence because you always doubt yourself. Like you go do something and then it's not until you tell a friend and they go, oh, that's really good. And then you go, oh, okay, it's kind of good. And then that award came through. It was like a solidification of us and what we stand for, what we do, how we help people. And that was the moment to go, we want to help people do that many more times, that many more families. And then it just became a fire. And so for us,
so you haven't lost the passion yet for getting results? Do you think you will? Like, what's going to happen? What's going to make you go, oh, I've done so many times now. I'm making dreams come true for Australian investors.
I think, the moment that would make me kind of feel a little bit of the opposite would be imagine 10 years goes by. We're 5 years in now. Imagine another 5 years goes by. And right now we're at a state where every single week for the next 3 years, we can put up a case study of someone that's hit 3, 4, 5 properties, $500,000 growth in equity, outperforming markets of the percentages, on track to hit their goals or have hit their goals. And so to know that and imagine 5 years later, you get another 5, 10 years of that happening. And every single time you've got the solution, you've got the answer, you've got the research. And then imagine if we get to a point where every day our customers are like, oh, but what about that? And what about this? And what about this? And they don't trust. And that would be the moment going, I hate convincing. I'm not a convincer. I feel like I'm still trying to convince people. I'm just very grateful that hasn't happened. The customer buy-in that we have when clients come on board. I saw what you did with my friend. He started with one house. He's now got 5, lots of equity, good yields. They're growing well. I thought everything was going to fall and it didn't. I want to do that. And so that weaning off effect, if that stops, then I would question, I don't like having to convince people to do stuff. It's annoying. Like I don't want to do that. But fortunately, touch wood, every customer's like, we back you. Look after us like you did my friend. Yeah. Go for it.
And therein lies the opportunity, but also the challenge with the business that you've chosen to be in. That's being a buyer's agent. And this is more of a data question or a prediction question, but sort of running on that theme. If someone comes to you and says, I want to do what you did for my mate Billy, does the property market allow you to do that irrespective of the market cycles? And this is the key point. Is it repeatable? Can you do that despite or irrespective of what the future may look like? Do you back property so much that you know that you can apply the research fundamentals you do, the baseline buying fundamentals and the philosophies that you've embraced, to continue to do that over the years ahead? Is it that guaranteed? It's all comes down to is the market guaranteed? It's the execution which is variable.
It's such a good question. I think the first thing that I think of is 2018 and 19. There's a vivid memory that comes to my mind. And I remember the national markets, I think it was 2019, had performed about 2.9% in terms of capital growth. And I remember posting a photo for a client case study about a property we bought in Ballarat in 2018. And as you know, during that 2 years, I was very bullish on regional Vic, and that proved to go really well. Ballarat moved up in that particular property about 9 months in on evaluation, 9% up. I could remember my social profiles were going off the most they've ever been. People liking, commenting, I want that, that's amazing, that's great. And then I remember having the COVID results and a place went up 20%, and then we had something go up 30%. And so what I've come to learn is, can we have every person's portfolio laid out during these COVID years and then say, everyone can get that? No. But what I can say is 5 years on, there's a track record built of me going, the country's heading this way, but we've found a city every year that will do that little bit more. And so the thing I haven't built now is, I've got 3 things. One is a due diligence checklist that's going to make sure that we're not stuck buying something that we feel really crappy about years later. Number 2 is a market somewhere that's going to do better than the country's doing on average. And then number 3 is be able to know how to get a portfolio from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 without constantly feeling stuck and constantly questioning the moves you make. So those 3 fundamentals, every year we can pull that off. Whether the country says yes, the country says no in terms of its growth for the national macros, it's just about being that better than the country, not saying that every year is a 20% growth. Because the short answer to that is no. You just can't do that. You can't take 2021's results and say every year, every place, 30%. 2 times in the last 25 years, Phil, is when those national booms occurred, 2000 and 2005. And now 2020 to about, you could say, continuing on now after a short pause. But outside of that, it's just about finding each city that has an opportunity to do something for that short term, and then you're holding long term. 90% of LGAs are performing quite well.
So maybe I can reframe what I said, but it's not a bad idea. The long-term prospects for the asset class are guaranteed. The execution is the variable component. That's probably a better way.
The execution and the expectation.
Expectations and the execution is the variable component.
Correct.
Expectations change.
Yeah.
Depending on where you are with your investor's journey, what your cultural upbringing is, what your socio-economic upbringing is. Expectations continue to change, and sometimes most people will have a flight towards more positive, ambitious expectations rather than negative expectations. Is only when people buy the wrong property for the first property is where they have a negative perception towards property or expectations. Whereas what I'm hearing from you and your clients is that once they start down that pathway, they have largely a positive expectation of how property can be an engine for creating wealth. Because Absolutely. How many people go from one to that's it, one and done? Have you looked in your book of clients? How many are one and done?
Very few in our book of clients, one and done. I think it becomes a bit of a craving and an addiction too.
So this is the expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it also becomes a bit of an addiction too for 2 parts. One is because when you can get a result of a property where you didn't have to lift a heavy finger, that makes something very repeatable. And that's the power of outsourcing. Like if I'm having a meal out all the time and I didn't have to cook anything, prepare anything, buy the groceries, figure out the list, get the quantities right, have everything go perfect, probably going to do it a little bit more often, right? And I'll go eat out more. And it's the same thing that investors are having when they have that professional support around them. It's not like, whew, that was one property. That was tough. We did a lot. It's like, hey, what? That was it? Everything's done? Yeah, well, it's done. We'll see you for our annual reviews. Oh, but I want to do another one. Sure. So I think that from a perspective of the friction is removed is great. And that's also causing that addiction, the craving, the desire for property. But the second thing is those expectations, as you said. When you see your friend, when you see your cousin, your uncle get certain results, you want that. And now it's about me managing those expectations because, yes, we're seeing the boom conditions return in many cities. But at the same time, you just can't take the last 2 to 3 years and say that happens every year. Long term as an asset class, depending on the city, it's about 5 to 8%. So you got to be ready to say outperformance is 6 to 10, 7 to 9, 8 to 12. That's outperformance, not 20, 30, 40 every year. So I think that's a big
So if you're
education.
outperforming by a couple of percent, you're doing pretty well in property.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, that's expectations.
Yeah.
You know, you got to manage expectations. You got to manage your own personal expectations and one of the reasons why we started Smart Property Investment is because we just went, you know, we used to watch all the media or listen. You didn't listen back then. You used to read it in a magazine. And all the stories were people that made 30, 40%. And we go, nah. That's not normal. That's not normal. So we created this platform to say this is normal, you know, and what we've always strived towards is that educating people around property investment, but give them that little bit to help them outperform through, you know, buying effectively or under market value, because then you get your outperformance because you uptick on the arbitrage around the manufacturing equity, all that basic type stuff. So if you want to chase outperformance, you're chasing small percentage. Outperformance.
At the end of the day, my whole portfolio personally, since 2015 when I started it, has been mapped on a 5% per annum average.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, it's doing its job at 5%. Anything above that, I'm happy with. And so it's just about getting back to those times, because after we shake up, you know, the undersupply period and we move out of that in Australia, eventually it has to happen. It's all a seesaw. Property is not meant to be this one pointed direction thing. It's a seesaw, and eventually long term you stretch the curve. It's one pointed direction on the way up. But the key thing is once we get out of that, people will have to face the reality that 5 to 7% is a great job.
You still buying personally?
Yeah.
What sort of stuff?
So for me right now,
Give me the inside word. Where are they?
I'm transitioning personally to commercial.
Okay.
I've had a good, run with a lot of residentials across 5 states.
Yep.
I'm trying to do a bit of reshuffle so I can get my home locked in as well, like the forever home.
Yep.
But that's, once that's done, I think it's just straight commercial from there because we've got a good residential base and foundation. And that's the journey we take our clients on too. It's like, hey, let's start off with a couple of foundation assets. Then we have this word called momentum, which is affordable, good yields, good growth, spread them across the country, be diverse. And then we have the third stage, which is called passive. Unit blocks, renovation projects, commercial properties.
Yeah. And that's a typical journey for a lot of investors.
That's it.
I've done it. Most investors I know, at some point in time, they get a nice big residential portfolio, then they get fatigued by that residential portfolio when it's done a lot of the heavy lifting for them in terms of equity creation, and they pivot into commercial assets.
Absolutely.
That's okay.
No one should have a goal to have a number of properties. No one should have a goal to have a number of kitchens or bathrooms or roofs to manage. Someone should have a tool or an enabler, a vehicle of those properties to get you your goal with the least possible.
Yeah.
And if that least possible is 2 commercial properties, now does it after you've built your residential? Great. If you need 20, 30, 40 residentials and you think that's the way to go because that's what you feel is most comfortable to your plan, it is what it is.
Yeah. Are you selling stuff down to shuffle the decks?
No, not for commercial transitions.
No.
I would sell, and I'm in the process of looking at a home to live in.
Okay.
I would sell a couple of Sydney assets because what happened was I had my first home in 2015. I then, in last year, I bought Next Door Neighbour.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Impulsively at auction.
Impulsively at auction.
Yeah.
I still got plans to demolish and build a home there, and that's our forever. But at the same time, I stumbled across a property that ticks all the future build stuff that doesn't need us to build.
Okay.
So there are moments like that. If that happens, then I'd get rid of the two homes and swap a Rooney just to get that done. But other than that, no consolidation.
No, and that's okay, right? And I want to have a sort of chat with you around buying owner-occupied properties because it's essentially what you're talking about there. And it's sort of different rules apply for owner-occupied. But from what I've seen, people who look for owner-occupied homes do it through the lens of living there, but they also think about the upside and leveraging it because there's great utility in your owner-occupied property if you know how to use it properly, and you shouldn't be sinking money into stuff which still doesn't have good investment fundamentals. But we'll have a discussion around that. So let's talk about some of these predictions you've made. I sort of mentioned that largely you've got them right. We'll just go to a quick break. Stay with us, everyone. Back in a moment. Welcome back. It's Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm with Arjun Paliwal. He's the founder of Investicate, also the buyer's agent of buyer's agency of the year, right? Does the REB Awards, Real Estate Business Awards.
Agency.
Yeah, we spoke about that. You also host the Property Notes. How's your podcast going? I know everyone can tune into it on the Property Investment Podcast Network where you're tuning into this. You still enjoy it?
Loving it. We're
Yeah.
closing into 400,000 downloads now.
You got 400,000 downloads.
Very close to it.
God.
And I think the big
That's a
standout.
lot of downloads.
Yeah, the big standout for us is, if you recall a couple of years back when we first started it, it was the idea that scared me was talking data through a mic, right? There's nothing visual. There was nothing there. How do I get people in their rides home to think of the data and visualize it? But then at the same time, I realized no one's just isolating the data and just talking about what it can and can't do, where it looks good, where it doesn't. And so I felt like, hey, even if I can't visualize it, others will.
Yeah.
They'll take their own interpretation. They'll visualize it as they see best fit. And so we thought, hey, look, let's get this going, because no one's doing it just on the research element. And so that was a big focus of ours, and that's been very popular. We get messages and emails regularly. Every week I get someone saying, hey, I feel bad that I haven't used you guys as a buyer's agency just yet. But my family and I, we all bought properties using your research papers and podcasts, and they've gone up this and gone up that. I love that stuff.
Brilliant.
I'm like, well done. In fact, one of our team members, he joined the team through listening to the podcast.
Great.
Following your podcast, love every bit. I even bought properties on there. They've all killed it. I sent all my families all your white papers every month they come out. Tell them to buy stuff. They killed it. I think it's about time I either buy from you guys or join forces. And that was
What
awesome.
a great recruitment tool, right?
And interesting enough, he's been one of the best hires because of how passionate he is from that.
Well, got to make passion your paycheck. That's a Tom Panos thing. But the point is, and I think it's good. And I take, this perception that talking, not being able to see data makes it hard to discuss data. But I think doing it via the medium of audio means that you've got to. You're just not giving facts. You've got to give the stories around it. And it's the storytelling around the data, because you've got to verbalise it, instantly turns it into analysis and interpretation of the data. So you're not just presenting, here's some data, do what you will with it, because you're narrating it, or you're diarising the data through voice. You've got to say, this is what it's saying, that's fine, but this is what it means. This is how you use it.
That's it.
And that's the key.
That is.
So you use data to make your investing decisions. So you buy largely right around Australia. You've made some calls over the years around, say, for example, Adelaide, continue to perform when everyone else is saying it's done its run. There's nothing lifting it. This is all data driven interpretation analysis. So it's working.
Yeah. I think one thing is that whilst our trends change, the charts in front of us will change directions. Things that black swan events no one knows about, they come up. COVID, the printing, the pandemic, the lives impacted, the economy shifting from good to okay to strong to weak, all that stuff. History's seen it all. And the beauty about history is it shows us all these trends. And so when I realized the power of data was when I asked myself questions in that explanation point, the interpretation piece. Could you ever see a time where days on market, speed to sell, goes up, vendor discounting, how much money from list price to sale price the discounts end up being, goes up, sales volume, how much people are transacting, goes down, people buy less, listings, how much of sale goes up, construction goes up. Imagine all this. This is not a pretty picture. Vacancy rates go up, go high. I've never seen a market in history rise when all those trends have gone that direction. So what did I do? I looked for the opposite. Because there will not be a time where you can tell me a property market will rise by 20% and everyone's taking longer to sell, gives away more discounts, the rental market's weak, there's lots of properties for sale, no one's buying, lots of construction, the weak economy, and people are not in a diverse economy and they're leaving the city. You're the best salesman in the world if you can get someone to buy something in a city like that. And so this was the moment that taught me everything's there. I've just got to get better at interpreting it. I've got to input the variables that can stop me from making errors by going on the ground, visiting markets, getting local human opinion, finding the things that people like, don't like from a actual human perspective. Because remember, housing is 65% owner-occupier. Yeah. And the other 35% is not just an investment, it's also tenants living there, which means that housing is 100% human-led. The data just follows the human activity. So if I can get that interpretation of what people like, don't like, mix it with the spreadsheets, mix it with it on the ground, it's pretty hard to get it wrong. So that's kind of the core components we wanted to get right, especially with a long-term asset class that over 25 years, 90% of LGAs, local government areas, have produced 5% of compounding growth or more. So everywhere's doing okay if you hold it long enough. Now it's just about going, okay, I've got some safety wheels on because everywhere's doing okay. The asset class is sound in Australia. We're in a magnificent country that allows us that comfort. Now let's take the training wheels off and focus on the short-term stuff.
So why is the market so strange at the moment but still performing? Because everyone would say, well, God, like, you know, how many interest rate rises we've had, there's talk of another one. It feels as though things should be going backwards rather than forwards. So how do you make sense of it all?
It's not. I think what happens is people have a bad issue of focusing on one data point.
Yeah.
And so go back to the pandemic, everything's gone because population growth's gone. Well, wait, hold on a minute. Did migrants just come off planes and buy properties left, right, and center? They don't. Everyone's fairly normal, fairly like coming across, trying to find a job, settle down, enjoy what Australia has, move their family over, rent for a bit, figure out which area they want to be in. Do they like this place? Do they not? Are they going to travel here? Are they just going to visit? Are they going to actually live and put, you know, posts and fences and everything down? So I think the main thing is people have a bad habit of focusing on one metric. And just today's metric happened to be interest rates.
Yeah.
You know, you go put interest rates aside, we got the lowest unemployment, job vacancies are pumping up like crazy in a good way. We've got low supply, low construction. And when I say low supply, for sale and for rent. And then you've actually got some cities, believe it or not, that haven't grown a lot in the last year. They actually fell. So they're just making up lost times. Like Sydney went back double digits. It's gone back up double digits. So it grew in the eyes of someone looking at the market today. But all it did is just catch up on the lost moments it had last year. And then when you think about Australia as a country, you've got 10 trillion worth of asset value with 2 and a bit trillion worth of debt. So it's not like these interest rates are crippling 8 trillion worth of debt.
It's good LVR.
So when you bring up fundamentals, it's just still very strong.
Yeah.
It's only that people are looking at the fundamentals in an isolated metric, think one thing controls everything. And they'll keep doing that. That's been happening for the last 30, 40, 50 years. 10 years later will be something else. It's just about going, I need to separate myself from the pack and not be a one metric analyzer. I need to realize there's two things. One is many metrics. And the second thing is, as if, unless you're a multi-trillion-dollar fund, are you buying all of Australia when you buy? You know, there's $10 trillion here. Not even the biggest funds are buying $5 trillion worth of property or anything. Remember, it's 65% owner-occupier.
Occupied.
So you control those two metrics, separate them macro from the micro, and then start realizing there's a lot more data points under the hood, you're going to be okay.
And I'm happy you answered that question that way because I set it up for you to sort of give a lens and a view to it. And the point is, and I would like to think most people tuning into this podcast is more aware of market dynamics than people who probably don't. So they're obviously interested and engaged and connected with property as an asset class. They're trying to increase their education around it. So it's not the mainstream media where most property stories are driven by one data point. You don't normally get stories in the mainstream media which are more holistic, where they view a particular scenario or something happening through the lens of multiple data points. And this is why you need to be leveraging all the research out there around it. The fact that you make it all free and available, Property Nerds, is a great thing, right? And the fact that you get that feedback from people who use it all and do it themselves, DIY investors, if you want to call it, that's really good. But you know, you do make some ambitious and bold predictions, and maybe it was on this podcast, I can't remember, we did speak about it. You called out Adelaide during the COVID period for double-digit growth in 22 and 23, and it's largely done that.
Yeah. So, I think the last quarter CoreLogic reported was the September quarter. That was the best performing capital in that quarter.
Yeah.
But the main thing that everyone hammered me on, I can't believe how much mail I got in the opposite direction, was that, hey, you got it right in 21, you won't get it right in 22, interest rates are here. Can't keep doing that. And I went on telly and I was like, hey, it's going to grow double digits in 2022. And it did over 10%. And I think the main thing is, and this is also another part, right? Because now, where do you go? Most of Australia has grown a lot.
Yeah. So there's no more growth in Adelaide is what you're saying?
No, because the key is people get that wrong. And that's where people thought, Arjun, no way, interest rates are here, COVID boom's over, there's no way Adelaide grows. And it was just about everyone zoning in on that one metric, interest rates, too much growth. Well, hold on a minute, let's just unpack Adelaide. Do they have a lot of houses for sale? No, still 30 to 40% below listings. What about rental vacancy? Nothing there. What about construction pipeline? Pretty low. What about jobs? Lots. What about lifestyle, tourism, positive migration? Improving. What about affordability? Still pretty affordable. What about all the factors of, unemployment and job diversity? Not just job ads. Pretty good. So until some of these fall off, you cannot just say because a city's grown, it should stop growing. Remember Hobart? 2016, it started really going off. 2018, I think it's done its time. 2020, I reckon it's done its time. 21, must be done now. 22, I think it's done. And then it finally did its thing in 2022 and it's done. Yeah. And then all of a sudden KPMG comes out and goes, 23 and 24, Hobart's going to be pretty up there again. I mean, who knows? But the main thing is 6 years? Everyone keeps saying property booms only last 2 years, 3 years.
But what is a property boom?
Anything, in my opinion, above 8% is a boom because it's above long-term averages.
Outperforming long-term averages.
Correct.
Yeah. And there's always something which is outperforming long-term averages.
Always something. Yeah. There hasn't been a year in the last 40 years of data where something isn't.
So where's that going to be in 2024, Arjun?
Well, 2024, I think right now you're obviously still seeing Adelaide and Perth kick some goals. Brisbane's back again. One thing I'd say, it may not be 24. It could even go into 25. Victoria's going to come back. You actually look at Melbourne and how much hammering it's got from policies that have gone bad. The state debt that looks pretty average. You look at 7 years of average performance. Melbourne hasn't been that great for 6 or 7 years. Yes, it had a little bit of COVID jump, but it lost its stuff. I just think that Victoria is seeing some pretty good things which should start to come into fruition over the coming years. Now, I'm still working on my metrics to give you a full proper prediction for 2024. We'll no doubt do that to end the year off. But in terms of 25, stretch out that one little year after, a lot of macro conditions on parts of Victoria where even though they're weak on some elements, I think it's starting to come back around. And so I think over the next 12 months, what happens in Victoria's construction pipeline, what happens in its local economy, how the state debt starts to shift in things, and how certain projects, do they get shelved, do they stay alive, the job creation. I think right now a lot of other fundamentals are going well for it. These things could start to turn around and start to come back again. So I think look out 2025. I feel over the coming years, Victoria is setting itself up. It's just that state economy is a little bit of a the compliance laws and how heavy they've gone there. But everything's yin and yang. You pull me too much in one direction, rents should start to pull the other way. You pull me too much in the economic direction, things will start to lift back up with a bit of a lifesaver. So I think those are some things to look out over the coming years.
Yeah, it's certainly a state in transition and it's going to take a little while for it to get some political and economic stability.
That's where I think the
coming
stability.
off the fallout of some of the decision making recently. It's not a political podcast, so I won't go there. But it's very much ado about nothing, right? That joint, nothing's been going on for a while. So at a point in time, when you consider the size of the Melbourne market, is it bigger than Sydney yet?
Well, technically, they've put in Melton as part of Melbourne, which geographically, any Sydneysider would be silly to say, why isn't Melton part of it? Because it's not that far, if you think about it. And it's part of it, so now makes it bigger. It is therefore the biggest city in the country.
And they're saying Melbourne will be bigger because there's more space for it to expand into. Sydney's contained by, down the south, you got National Park, to the north you got, the what do you call it? Broken Bay?
You got Blue Mountains on one side.
Blue Mountains the other side. So
you got
it's
Hawkesbury on the north.
Hawkesbury to the north. Yeah.
And then you've got Picton and stuff in the south is where it kind of ends.
It's all contained. So eventually it will be a bigger city. And when you consider some of the very ambitious immigration quotas they've got sort of putting out now to try and drive and supercharge economic growth moving forward. But again, another topic. Arjun, what I want to get to, and this is all really, really important, but we've sort of been chatting it through the lens of property investment for the purpose of a property investment portfolio. However, there's another aspect to property investment, and that is the 60% of homes which are owner-occupied, as in people live in it, and that's their home. And we don't really concentrate too much around on this podcast. That said, because a lot of the baseline fundamentals around property investment is consistent. with buying an owner-occupied home, but there's other aspects to it. So I really want to pick your brain. I know there's something you've been thinking about a little bit. We'll just go to another break. Stay with us. We'll be back at the Smart Property Investment Show in just a moment. Welcome back, Phil, from Smart Property Investment with Arjun Paliwal from Investor-Kit. You having a holiday this year, Arjun?
Very chill Christmas one. I won't do much.
Yeah.
And we'll head overseas in January. We're off to the Middle East. That's the plan.
Very
so
good.
It should be good.
Yeah, it's an interesting time in the Middle East at the moment. You're not going to any of the dodgy parts, are you?
Oh, man, there's lots going on in some parts. But no, we'll be heading off to UAE.
Okay. You should be pretty safe and sound there in UAE. Nice part of the world. You can look at property while you're out there. It's an interesting property market. You should have a look at it. It's like, don't buy, but just don't take your checkbook. But just you'll.
My wife's been following a TV show. I can't remember what it's called. Something Bling in Dubai or something. They've got real estate. They've got businesses. A lot of drama. A lot of this. And I had one of those moments. I was sitting down. I was like, oh my god, please turn this off. And then I'm like, oh wait, she did that. And then I started getting in. I was like, okay, I better snap out of this. So I got 2-3 episodes in, and she captured me with the dramas and the ups and downs. And then I had to just get up and get off it because I was going to get hooked.
It's intriguing to buy through the lens of economic growth and development and property. And it's Bernard Salt, the demographer, who you probably know or know of. He has this theory called the Dubai effect, and he applies the same logic to real estate in the Asia Pacific. So the Dubai effect is the Middle East is quite a volatile area. Huge amounts of wealth and the ability to manufacture wealth in many, many different ways, but it's volatile in terms of its political and religious framework. You never know what's going to happen, right? And we're seeing that right now in the Middle East. But what happens, though, is that this wealth-creating effect means that there's a lot of people with a lot of dough. So what they do, they park that into the UAE, primarily Dubai and also Abu Dhabi, but mainly Dubai. So it's called the Dubai effect. So that is really the sponge for all the wealth in the Middle East, and it's where people put their wealth and hold their wealth and protect their wealth.
Right.
Called the Dubai effect. So it's hence the reason why it's and people go to Dubai to do things they normally wouldn't be able to do in more traditional and conservative parts of the Middle East. It's a hot spot for that sort of stuff, right? It's a good time town, and there's heaps of money, and it's largely stable, and therefore you can build wealth. So his theory is that Sydney and Melbourne essentially is the equivalent of Dubai for the Asia Pacific. So back to property markets, the Dubai effect certainly resonates in the Asia Pacific through Sydney and Melbourne because it's a safe place for people to park their money.
Yeah.
Politically stable. It has a robust legislative and also policy basis for supporting the asset class of property. Banks are highly invested into it. So you park your money in Sydney and Melbourne if you're in the Asia Pacific. So hence the reason why we attract a lot of money out of Malaysia, Thailand, China, Japan, all the major areas of the Asia Pacific park their money here, which is great for property investors. There's another aspect of it all. You should do a research paper on this.
I might have a look into it, see what the impacts are.
I could see your mind ticking already. But so Bernard Salt's got this theory, but I haven't really seen it broken down at a real practical level around the attraction of this money and how it actually buoys up the Australian property market, or is it a stimulating factor for ongoing growth of property in Australia. But the point is, don't buy any property when you're in Dubai. But now I've given you a legitimate tax deduction for the ATO. The reason why you're out there is to look at this phenomenon. But,
there's no research from my side on that just yet. I will look into something around what happens to this Dubai effect. But
it's a great theory. I like the theory. I think it's brilliant.
I'm not contributing to any major Dubai effect when I go there. I think the only thing I'll be going is a nice kebab, a nice little shawarma,
mate, shawarma's great out there.
It'll be good.
Shawarma is good out there. So buying your own home.
Yeah.
So the typical journey for Australian property investors is you buy a house to live in and raise a family, and then you get to a point where you might have a bit of equity or you're increasing your ability to generate income, and you start thinking about what your future looks like. Normally when you're about 40-ish, sometimes 50, and you go, oh, I better start investing in property. I'll buy some investment properties.
Yeah.
That's been the traditional, typical journey for most Australian investors. However, there's other ways you can slice and dice this, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people still get it largely wrong when they're buying their own principal place of residence, because it's emotionally an emotionally charged investment, and therefore people often overlook some critical areas of property investing when they go down that pathway. You must see it time and time again. It stifles people's ability to generate wealth.
I do. I think where my interest in this home buying stuff started to pick off was I asked a couple of clients a question. Imagine you fast forward to retirement time and you've got two worlds. One world is your home's debt-free and life's good and you're chilling out. And in the last 10 years before you retire, you suddenly go, oh, that looks like on track, but I haven't done any investing. I need to play catch up. So option one is get your home, smash that down, focus the debt going off, and then you go, oh, I better invest. And then you play catch up on investing. You got 10, 15, 20 max to make it work. Or option two is you get your investing right. You know you're going to be okay. And then you have the rest of life to focus on the home. What do you prefer? And everyone said the second part. There wasn't one client out of all the ones I asked that said, oh, no, I want to go get my home first. They focused on that. And so then it made me realize, well, could everyone be doing it wrong if they're just focusing on that and then they're playing catch up on investing? And then I try to break it down. The research part came out. I was like, which reasons make sense, which reasons don't make sense. And I've been able to categorize 3 reasons where it makes sense to do it and 3 reasons where it doesn't make sense to do it. If we're starting with some of the make sense reasons, the first thing is if you're buying a home in a city, the rental yields are high. The economy's diversified. And you're able to buy a home where you can see yourself that's not a unit and you're going to be able to live in there for some time. To me, that makes sense because that rent versus buy question is answered. The yields are high, which means rents are high. You can put that into your own mortgage. So now the monetary value is good. An example of a city like Perth and Adelaide, these cities have quite good rental yields where you could buy a 500 to 700K home and probably get 500 plus rent in a week. So if you're doing that, you can do the math and go, this is almost the interest. Now, obviously, in these current high interest rate times, it's not quite. But as that levels out, you're going to be saying, should I have rented this? Should I have bought this? And that dynamic is one big tick towards the buy side. The second is you're not getting a unit. So that's another tick. You're getting a house that will largely grow. Then the third part is you go, the economy's diversified. So it's not just high yields like you're buying a house in Broken Hill because the yields are 11% or 10% and you should therefore not be renting. It's got those boxes. So if you're doing those 3, that's one of the core reasons where it works out. Another one where it works out is that if you're buying a home and you're getting all these first home benefits, you do the money in versus the return on investment because you're putting so many grants into the equation. Even if your property grew half as much as an investor's perfectly positioned property, you probably still get the same dollars.
Yeah.
Because your dough ended up buying an 800K property where their investor's dough ended up getting them a 500K property. So even if a 500K property outperforms because they had to keep putting in all these extra costs for government costs and this, you had to put in the same cash, but you got 800K value. And we all know long-term averages end up being quite similar. So that works. But in that scenario, you don't want to grab that huge grant benefit and go, well, I'll just chuck it into some unit because it looks and feels good. And also, what if your backyard's not the best for that time? So the dynamic of the backyard must be pretty good. The fundamentals should be good. You buy a house and you use up the grants and benefits. That's pretty helpful. You get a better ROI on your money. You're in a good city with growth prospects and you bought a house. So if you turn that into investment down the track, it's okay. The third and final part is a really important part. You buy a home that's borderline your dream home or a home that you feel good about that you could stay in for a decade. And the decade effect is very powerful in home buying because where people get it wrong is they buy a house. A few more kids now. Maybe we should upsize this. It's not big enough. Oh yeah, but let's turn it into investment. I don't want to sell this. I want to make this an investment and I want to keep this. Okay, well, let's keep it as an investment. Sentimental value kicks in. They don't want to get rid of it and it's not doing so well. It's using up borrowing capacity. And now they go get their next place. Now we got a bigger place. They're in their 30s to 40s. Hey, I feel like our jobs are going well. careers are good and got an extra child now. Maybe it's 2 to 3 or 4 kids. Maybe you need an extra car space. I don't really like the school's better there. They've sell, buy. We've got to remember 2 things. Owner-occupier debt is not good debt. Owner-occupier value that you can downsize, clear lots of investment debts, is great debt when it's gone because you downsize, you clear it all. But you don't give yourself an opportunity to ever downsize with a meaningful gap in your debt versus wealth because you keep acquiring, you're upsizing, you keep grabbing more debt. And so you never get this time to deleverage. You keep going from a unit to a townhouse, to a small house, to an okay house, to the top school house, to the best house. Kids move out, then it's all this downsize on the way down, play catch-up investments. The second part of that is that in flipping in Australia actually sucks. We have horrible buy-sell costs. You pay a buyer's agent a fee, you pay a lawyer a fee, you then pay stamp duty. Then you end up, being in a competitive market, so you pay some good dollars for something you like. Then you hold it for a while, rates, land taxes, maybe not on your home, no land tax. Then you come to exit the property, you're paying a sales agent a fee, potentially capital gains depending on how long you stayed there or not. Lawyers again, you might do some renos, some styling, some marketing. You're losing close to 10% of gains on the buy-sell exits. So these make this not favorable for people who keep upsizing, keeping up with the Joneses. So these are the 3 scenarios where it works well, where you're going to stick in it really for a good time. You use up all the grant benefits and it just happens to have a market that works well. Or you're in a high-yielding city with a diversified economy and you end up getting a place there to call it home for some time and you end up removing the rent effect. Those are 3 scenarios where it works really well, and I encourage home buyers to go, hey, give it a go.
So why'd you start thinking about this? I would. Your point around, you ask people, would you want option 1, option 2? Most people go, I'll go option 2 before number 1. If you ask the average Australian on the street, they wouldn't even be thinking this way. Your average Australian on the street,
absolutely.
You only need to look at the current government and its views. And I come from a very working class background, a lot of the policies and a lot of the policy setting or policy innovation is still around getting Australians into their own home as the great Australian dream, right? If you're tuning into this podcast, you're already within a minority of Australians with a mindset which is different to others around property. Just by tuning into this, you're in the percentages. Only 8% of Australians have an investment property or claim some sort of tax deduction on their when they do their tax every year. I think that number's about right. So it is such a. You would think if you're into property that everyone's also in property and property investing. Yeah. They're not.
No,
they are not. You're in the minority of people just by having a different attitude towards property and property investment. And that being, I'm going to build a portfolio first before I buy my own home. Most people think you're mad. Most people still think you're mad and stupid and risky. And this is the way it is, and this is the way it will be, I think, in Australia. So let me give you a hot tip. The fact that you're thinking differently about it gives you a huge advantage.
Nailed it.
A huge advantage. And that's so that's so enlightening for a lot of people when they actually understand and appreciate that. And this comes back to this idea around perspective and also perseverance for people when they get their first property and they go, I've just stumbled onto something. Most people are like, I've just stumbled onto something that no one else really knows about. What a gift.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think I would now, realizing also all the people that are in that frame of thinking, well, no, option 1 all day long. Just ask them.
Most people are going to go option 1.
Yeah, they will.
I guarantee most people are going to go option 1.
It only happens to be our client base that I asked all of them and they go option 2 because they see, why would I want to play catch up in my older years? You're trying to work less. Or you're trying to be super focused on one area and you're not trying to add more to your to-do list. And no, they're like, I get that. But like you said, anyone on the street that say, get your home. What's your plan? Do you know what I mean? Are you on the pension? Are you trying to live off your super? Sit down with every financial planner to tell you super's not enough. Look at the pension and you'll look at it and go, well, that's not enough.
And herein lies the great irony for Australia. That is the policies protocols and legislation is all set up with a focus to getting people to own their own home to live in because it's the great Australian dream, right? But the dichotomy of that is that means that they're trying for people to be self-generate wealth for retirement because they don't want people sucking on the teat of the welfare state when they get older, right? So they want that as an objective, but at every step of the way, they make it hard for people to create wealth largely through independent investing. You spoke about the costs connected with transacting in property. You pay a lot of money to get in, stamp duty, bam. If you hold a lot of property, you pay land tax, bam. So they just keep hitting every step of the way to stop the key objective of making people self-sufficient in retirement. I sometimes sit there just going, it's absolutely madness. Yeah, it's absolutely madness. So, you need to have an appreciation. If you're going to go down this option 2 pathway, you're going to have to pay tax. That's the way it is. And guess what? You paying tax helps those other people that choose probably option number 1, where they don't create wealth through property and therefore they need to rely on the welfare state. That's great. What a great place to live. The fact that we can provide people with a comfortable retirement. That's what you do as a property investor. So you're going to sort yourself out, but guess what? One of the upsides along the way is that you're helping out a lot of people as well.
Very true.
This is the way it is. This is the way it is. But they make it hard. Like even now they're saying that pension tests, they're actually going to start including the family home into it. Like that's a
huge.
Big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
That's massive.
That means they're just going to have to make people sell properties to transact. Guess what happens when people sell properties? Someone's got to buy it. More tax receipts. And depending how they hold that property, capital gains.
And it won't be long till they chuck it up to 70, then 72, and 73 for super access and pensions to start. Yeah. And then just when you think you're at the finish line, it's probably 75, and all of a sudden you're like, why didn't I do that?
There you go.
Yeah.
So you're saying start investing as soon as you can. Don't buy your forever home first home.
I'm saying go and buy your investments to know that you're okay. Because you'd be surprised. People sometimes, and we can be guilty of that, Phil, being myself and yourself too, which is we can be guilty of, we have really successful investors in our client base and or on the show with you. And that can sometimes create this element that you're not going to be okay unless you have 10 properties. Majority of the plans over a 20-year with 3 to 5 assets debt-free, plus your super, and or a downsized or debt-free home, that get the job done. And I'm not saying get the job done with a 50K income. I'm talking about an 80, 100, 110 inflation-adjusted income with all the free time in your day, sometimes plus super on top. Extra stream that we don't count because we're not advisors. We can't talk super, but that's there. So from that perspective, I just think of it and go, please do not feel like it's this monumental journey that's extremely far away from where you are. It could just be a couple of right moves, holding the fort long term, and you're there. So for those people, absolutely, go and get your investment plans right. However, tuning into the show, if you're thinking, I really want to get the home. I want to get the home and I'm really going to do it. I've given you 3 ways where it makes sense. And those 3 ways are battle-tested, data-tested, reviewed, seen all the people who get it wrong in our clients' portfolio who come to us to play fixer-upper. These are the 3 where it works. Get in a house with high yields in a diversified economy. Don't buy in your backyard if the metrics of the backyard don't work out well. If they do, use those grants and benefits. Don't chuck it into a unit. And lastly, don't keep keeping up with the Joneses and upsize forever until your late 40s and then try and play catch up on life. Get the home. If you can sit on it for a decade, the decade effect of wealth growth, it kicks in. The old property doubles every 10 years. Heck, even if it's 15 years, you can stay there in 15. Something's building wealth for you. You stayed in that foundation of knowing you're at home. Put that goal behind you. Now you've got 15 years of clear focus on trying to figure out investing. These things, you do that, you'll be okay. But if you buy a unit for the sake of just getting in your home, if you use the grants and that's the only reason you're buying a home, so you can use these grants so you don't want to miss out. If you buy a home in a very, very low yielding area where you could have rented, I'm at Bella Vista and $1,000 a rent a week sounds crazy to some people. That's cheap.
It is cheap, and you could sell that property tomorrow for a lot of money, right?
Yeah, someone's buying that property.
But you bought it the right spot.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm renting in Bella Vista paying $1,000 a week, someone's mortgages is easily $2,000 a week. So those are examples of moments where if you're renting, you can start investing and use that money in borrowing capacity elsewhere.
And the key thing also is that, you mentioned trying to buy a place at a high yielding place, right? People go, that all sounds really, really good. This are probably people not tuning in this podcast. They'll be going, that all sounds really good, Arjun, for you. I can't buy in Sydney because I can't afford it. That's unfair. So what do you do about it? Like, you just got to be comfortable with the fact that you might need to rent if you want to live in Sydney, and you can invest somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people do.
A lot of people. It's in fact the majority of our clients who do that.
And in 20 years' time, if you've invested properly, you might be able to buy your family home in Sydney.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
the other play.
All the markets don't move at the same time. So when it might be that time to move and buy a place in Sydney, you may have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars equity elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so the idea there makes sense. And remember, the funniest thing is, people think that those who live and work in Sydney will live and work here forever. Internal migration data for the last 20 years shows more people leaving Sydney than coming in internally every year.
Yeah.
There isn't this year that magically everyone comes back because it's the mecca for people here. No, people come back from overseas and love Sydney, but Sydneysiders usually find their way out. So even if things are expensive here, who knows? You might not be here forever. You might be out on the beaches in Coffs Harbour or Central Coast. You might be out in Brisbane. You might like the time difference in your IT role, finishing at 3 p.m. in Perth, and then you're there, you have the sunshine, and you have the rest of the time for the... Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? It's a great thing about property. So if people want to challenge their thinking on what we just spoke about around owner-occupier stuff, they can just give you a call. You happy to have a chat?
I'm living on LinkedIn, so connect with me there.
You're living on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn's been my place of late. I've been getting a lot of cool fan mail, messages, writing out some social posts, dropping a few, knowledge bombs there, the blog posts, the white papers.
All that stuff. You enjoy
connect
it?
with me. Yeah.
It's the thing is that, I never plug my social media profiles, but I've got on LinkedIn maybe 40,000 connections.
There you go.
On that's the connections on LinkedIn, and then there's a whole heap of followers. But go and find me on LinkedIn as well. That's cool. It's
awesome.
Good. Yeah, mate. It's good. Reach out to Arjun. He's always one thing I have noticed about Arjun, amongst many positive traits, is that he's always ready for a good yarn around property and property investment without any agenda really. I'm sure he'd probably want you to use his company at some point in time, but. No agenda. You just want to share the love, Arjun.
Mate, it's passion turned into the paycheck, as Tom Panel says, right? So
there you go.
It started with the passion first. So, I'm very grateful to have moments where you don't even realize you're working. Yeah. And so to have that means you're in the right place. Yeah,
they're the best sort of jobs, right? The jobs that you don't think you're working.
Yeah.
But maybe that's what podcasting is. But that's Arjun Paliwal. Investigate. You can go and find these guys. Just Google them. The Arjun's pretty. Visible on the social media as well, so go and track him down. But you just Google Investigate, you'll find him, and make sure you listen to the Property News podcast. I listen to it; it's where I get all my information, and I regurgitate it and claim it as my own. No, I don't.
Love
but
it.
That you can listen to that also on the Property Investment Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Remember, go to smartpropertyinvestment.com.au, social media, Smart Property HQ. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.